Okay. Hello? Do I have to press this?
No, and?
I have no idea.
I'd like to open the meeting of the Town of Wenham Planning Board on Thursday, September 14th, 2023 at 7:04 PM. We are in person at 138 Main Street in the Town Hall, also on Zoom, I think. And the meeting is being recorded. We have Kate Mallory with us tonight as our staff person because Margaret is on vacation and well-deserved. Thank you for pitching in, taking us over. And the first item on the agenda is a continued public hearing on 8 Cedar Street. It's a definitive subdivision. I am, before we start the conversation, going to sign the affidavit noting that I watched the Zoom meeting from last time, although I was not present for the meeting. Thanks. Kate, do you have something you want to talk us through coming out of the last meeting?
No, I think,
And I see
unless you
Bob
want me to
Griffin is
read
here.
the agenda, I think that Bob Griffin is here. We did get from our peer reviewer, Bert Corey, we got his response, and then Bob has responded
I saw that.
to Brett. Yes.
And there was also a soil test done, is that correct?
Yes, yes, and I can
I was
actually
not
bring-
able to open that.
Yeah, I just sent it to you 2 seconds ago, but I can share that soil test as well.
Okay, that would be
It
great.
is right here.
Maybe just talk us through what they did and the outcome was.
So they went through the background of what has been happening at the property, or what previously had happened at the property. They went through the environmental testing. They had a whole list of things that they did. They did do the test pits and some of the information that you had asked for, David. And then the conclusion was that based on the data gathered during Phase 1 and Phase 2 assessments, there were no known reportable releases of oil or hazardous material associated with the use of the property. So it is of their opinion there is very low risk, potential risk of there being any undiscovered reportable release on the property.
Okay, and where did the, is there a map of where the samples were taken from as part of this?
I did not receive a map.
I think they're in the proposed
Yeah, there's
house
one,
location.
go to the
I think it's
appendices, I
in
think.
Is it farther down?
Yeah,
In the house
Oh,
locations?
okay, here we go.
Okay, awesome, thank
That's
you
the
so much.
locus.
Yeah, I wasn't able to open the file on my computer for
Yeah.
whatever
keep
reason.
going down, I think.
All right.
There we go.
Oh, okay.
So is it
Red.
the red? Yeah, awesome, thank you so much. Well, a number of waivers are being asked for here. Is there anything the applicant wants to tell us about?
Pointer here. I think you can see some test bits
Bob, I think you'll have to go to the microphone just so they can hear you.
Yeah, I mean, we're being recorded, so, thank you.
So Geological Field Services report did address the things that were described, but in addition, I think they spent a little bit of time at the beginning of their report going over the comments that had been made at the previous hearing and sort of addressing those comments, because they, as you will recall, they were not here that evening and they didn't really have the opportunity to respond to those comments and concerns that had been raised. So I think part of the report was just explaining why they did certain things. Like just one of the things that comes to mind is some concern was expressed about not taking samples of oil in the basement because of faint
Oh, yeah.
odor of oil had been detected. And so there's a couple of paragraphs explaining why they chose not to do it in that particular instance. And I think Geological Field Services also makes the point in their report that, as construction proceeds, if there are, unexpected conditions arising, if you come across signs of oil contamination or things like that, then, they'll have to respond. So they'll have to come out and perhaps take soils. And as, a concern was expressed about some oil staining on a concrete slab. So as that concrete slab is broken up and removed, you'll have the opportunity to look underneath the slab to make sure that contamination didn't go through it. So that's all part of the process as well. So this isn't necessarily the end of the process. They don't really expect to see significant contamination, but Mr. Sabatini and his contractors are going to have to keep their eyes open as the work proceeds, as is normal. So anyways, and I don't know if I can address any questions, if there are any lingering questions about the GFS material before I go on, but I'd be happy to try.
Any board member questions? I haven't had an opportunity to
Okay.
read the report because, as I said, I couldn't open it, and it doesn't seem to be in the packet here, so.
I think the most important thing is, of course, he's not recommending any further work, and I think he wanted to be very responsive to all the concerns that had been raised by the planning board, and so I think he did a pretty thorough review of the meeting notes and also, obviously, the additional testing and look around of the property as we wanted him to do. So, in regards to the design plans, we received the peer review comments about a week ago. And I know Bert Corey's on the line. I don't know if you want him to describe what he did or if you'd rather I just sort of go through the comments and how we responded. Whichever way you prefer is fine with me.
Well, I wonder if Mr. Corey wants to say anything to the board?
Good morning. I'm sorry, good morning. Good afternoon or good
Feels
evening.
like that to me, too.
Yeah, it's been a long day. I did write a review letter. The applicant has responded back to that. It's about 5 pages of notes. I mean, we can certainly go through those one at a time. They also include the waiver requests. I know I'm remote, so possibly Rob could go through that, but I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, I wonder if we could just tick through them and particularly the highlights. There are some things that are the responses. We don't really need to respond to this because it's favorable, but.
Sure. Well, all right. So why don't I'll go through my notes here, and then Bert, if I miss anything as we wrap up, just please fill it in or even interrupt me as we're going along here. But
sure, will do.
The first thing was had to do with the house numbers. And
Bob, can I interrupt you
of
for
course.
one
Yep.
second? So, Mr. Corey, have you had a chance to go through the response yet?
Have you read the responses from Mr. Griffin?
Yes, I have.
You have?
Yes.
Okay, so before we go blow by blow through this, do you have concerns about any of these that jump out?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think he's responded very well to all of the comments related to the subdivision rules and regulations, as well as some of the questions that I had with regards to the stormwater report.
Okay, so you're satisfied with all the responses?
I am, yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So the first item had to do with the house numbers, and we noted in our response that we figured because it almost looks like a driveway on going along Cedar Street that the houses might be numbered 8A and 8B or something like that. But it's really up to the town, it's up to the fire department, it's, whatever you think best serves the subdivision. Mr. Sabatini suggested that Lily Lane would be a good name for the street if you want to have a name assigned to the street instead of just Cedar Street house numbers. Second item is sort of a surveying item, but Bert's recommending that we provide a little bit more detail on the angles that are associated with the subdivision. So on C2, we've added some additional information to describe the angle of certain lines in the subdivision. If you flip back one more sheet to C2, there's just some, we described the length and the radius, and here we've added the interior angle to those curves. So that's item number 2. And there was also a request that we note that certain curves are not tangent with the street line, so right there and there's some non-tangent intersections. Also on C2, there was a request that we add some stone bounds to the layout, so we added a stone bound here, and I think we've got one there and one there. And these other angles, during construction, we can put iron rods there just to permanently mark those intersections, if that's satisfactory to the town. Number 4 had to do with benchmarks. We added some benchmarks to the existing conditions plan, which would have been C1, but that just gives the future builders some reference points to measure from. Item number 5 had to do with the pipe capacity, and Bert was asking that we verify that the pipes can handle the storm flows. It turns out that this is a pretty small subdivision, and so our pipes are probably a little bit bigger than might be used for such a small subdivision, but we have plenty of capacity in the pipes to convey even the 100-year design storm. So
yeah, and it was the subdivision rules and regulations that require the rational method. I know you did the the SES method, which is perfectly fine, but just to follow through with the requirement of the subdivision rules and regs. That's all.
Okay. Number 6 had to do with staking out the layout of the roadway, and certainly we'll stake it out for construction. But if we were to advance a little bit to C3, when we look at the roadway layout, you can see that there's a bunch of existing structures near it. So there's a garage building there, there's a shed, there's a house over here. So it's relatively easy to find your way around the subdivision and sort of locate where, for example, the catch basin is. The catch basin is right behind the house and things like that. So I did put some additional paint marks on the driveways out there so that if somebody was going out there, they could orient themselves pretty quickly. But I think there's enough information on the plans to get through a walkover of the property. Item 7, if you look at the layout of Cedar Street and the angle of the property lines coming into it, they're not quite 90 degrees. It turns out they're around 77 degrees, and we've made the roadway parallel with those lot lines. And so Bert's asking us in this instance to consider making it a more perfect 90 degrees. And I just don't really think it's necessary. I think the layout actually works pretty well the way it is, and you've got good sight distance up and down Cedar Street, so there's no real need to convert it from 77 degrees to 90 degrees, in my opinion.
And there's no waiver required for that?
That's correct. Number 8, this had to do with the, no, I'm sorry, 8 was no response required. The next one had to do with sidewalks. And I think that the way the language reads is that, if the board wants, it can require sidewalks. I don't think it necessarily requires that we ask for a waiver to not have sidewalks. But given the small size of this subdivision, we didn't really think adding sidewalks to the connection here would be helpful. It's just such low traffic volumes and a desire to minimize stormwater runoff that we didn't put sidewalks in here. If the board thinks that it would be better to have a waiver specifically addressing the absence of sidewalks, we can do that. But I personally don't think it's necessary. Number 10 had to do with...
Otherwise required, right?
Again, I think you can require sidewalks, but I don't think
It's an option.
Right, but I don't think it's required per se. So...
Yeah, that's correct, and it's in the opinion of the board,
Okay,
if they are
fair.
warranted.
The next item had to do with the size of the cul-de-sac. I think the subdivision requires a 140-foot right-of-way and a 110-foot pavement. In this instance, we have a 90-foot radius outside circle and an 80-foot radius on the pavement. And we had consulted with the fire department before we presented the preliminary plan, you may recall, and we actually have a memo from the fire department confirming in writing that they're satisfied with the 80-foot pavement diameter.
And they've looked at this so that they're sure it's consistent with this? Kate, do you know whether that's true?
I don't know.
It's
I
the
think-
same as you
yeah, we-
had before. Okay, great.
It's been,
They were satisfied without using the driveways, right?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Item number 11 is, refers to a request for a roadway maintenance agreement being provided at an appropriate point in time. Miranda Samasco from Glovsky & Glovsky did provide a draft roadway maintenance agreement. Basically, you know, the road's going to be privately maintained, and it's going to be 50% for Lot 1 and 50% for Lot 2. Let's see, item 12 was a no response required. Item 13 asked about, are the septic systems approved for the 2 lots? And they are. The Board of Health has reviewed those plans already. Item 15 referred to lighting, and we're not proposing any street lights here. We are, we've identified a location on each of these lots for a lamp at the end of their driveway, sort of like a lantern lamp, you know, sticking up 5 or 6 feet off the ground.
Like a 6-foot lamp
Right.
post?
And I
I
think
wasn't
that's-
sure what was meant by that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be adequate. You know, again, very low volume roadway. Houses are reasonably close to the cul-de-sac, so you'll have light diffusing from the windows of the house as well. So,
Yeah, there were concerns expressed in the public hearing previously about excess lighting, so we appreciate not,
keeping it down.
keeping it
Okay.
down.
There was a request that we identify the nearest hydrant. in
Can I
this-
back you up? I'm
I'm sorry, yep, of course.
Bert is suggesting that you request a waiver from the street lighting requirement. Have you requested one?
We didn't, and this is sort of similar to the sidewalk issue. You know, if you think we should ask for a waiver, we're happy to do that, but I don't think it's necessary as I read the regulations.
In my mind, it would satisfy the concerns that were expressed in the public hearing if it were expressly stated on the plans that were
That's fine.
waiving. the
Yeah, that
requirement.
doesn't really say that it's, if it's warranted or at the discretion of the planning board in this particular one anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, let's have you ask for a waiver on that one, if you would, please.
Happy to do that. The next item asked that we identify the nearest location, which is about, I think this is 115 feet from that location. South on Cedar Street is the closest hydrant.
And the fire department, excuse me, and the fire department was okay with that, 100?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
We skipped over one too, item number 14
Oh, the 8-inch
On
water
your-
main.
on your response, because that also is a waiver request too from the 8-inch water main being installed in the street. Instead,
this
they're
was one of those
proposing,
no response required
two water
because-
services, which is reasonable.
Great, thank you.
Right, and the water department had asked that we provide 2 separate 1-inch lines. I think we originally suggested providing 1 1.5 or one 2-inch line, and they said, no, we'd rather have 2 1-inch lines, so that's, we're giving them what they asked for.
Thank you. Hydrant, we talked about.
So 17 was monumentation. I mentioned earlier that we're going to provide some concrete bounds around the subdivision and can provide iron rods additionally at the request of the town. 18 gets into some of the calculations that went into the stormwater report. I did get a chance to talk to Bert earlier today about some stormwater report calculation questions, and I think that we've demonstrated that the project results in a reduction in both the rate and volume of runoff from the property, and that's primarily because of the large, or somewhat large infiltration field that's underneath the cul-de-sac. So, 19 refers to the infiltration facility draining within 72 hours is what DEP requires, so that by the time the next storm comes along, it's empty. And in this particular case, it should be empty within 25 hours. So well within the DEP recommendations there.
Right, and I did another side calculation, and it drains. Actually, it's such favorable soil out there at 8.27 inches per hour that it drains in essentially 3 hours.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, because the 100-year storm isn't a 100-year storm anymore, as you know.
Yes, right. Yes.
We added some information to the to C3 about the bottom elevation of the dry wells. And again, good soils, no signs of groundwater really in any of the test pits, I don't think. So we've had 8 to 10 feet of gravelly soil without a groundwater table. So those dry wells will work very well. The dry wells are picking up roof runoff, one there, one there, one there, and one over there. Item 21, just checking on the capacity of the water quality treatment device. Before the water goes into the infiltration field, it goes through a water quality treatment device. This will better remove sediment than just a regular catch basin, and also provide some oil and grease removal as well. So this protects the longevity of the infiltration device. And it's required in this instance in part because we're in the watershed of Wenham Lake, right. So item 22, we added some erosion and sedimentation controls, the downhill end. So in particular, this is sort of the low end of the property here. So the first thing Mr. Sabatini will have to do at the time of construction would be to install some erosion and sedimentation controls down there. And we also had some typos in a portion of the O&M plan, which we've provided a corrected page on that. So I think that sort of summarizes the DGT comments, unless I missed something. Bert?
No, I'm just checking out one thing on the on C3. I see that you have the erosion controls on the south portion of the site. I was just looking along where the proposed roadway comes in, again on the south side. I just wanted to check out the grades. I can't tell whether we're upgrading or downgrading in that area.
Yeah.
For the against the abutter to the south.
So I think the catch basins certainly are in a low spot, and I think we had a gradient away from that property line, but at the same time, it'd be easy enough to put some silt fence along that stretch as a means of sort of, making sure the construction activities stay away from it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see that was added, so I would suggest that it's added along that line too, just during the construction of that roadway, to protect the abutter.
It's the fence.
To the north again, can't tell with the grades. I don't know if it slopes down to the north, along that proposed roadway. I can't see that in here.
It appears that there's an existing fence on the south property line by the, south of the street, where the new street would be.
Yeah, there's also a note of a stockade fence right there as well.
Whose is that? Is that 8 Cedar Street's fence, or is it the neighbor's fence?
It looks like it's right on the line, so I'm really not sure.
You probably need to figure that out.
Yeah. So Mr. Sabatini and the neighbor, I think, could work on any improvements that are necessary to the fence at the time of construction. But
so the fence is staying?
Yes.
Yeah, so possibly erosion controls right along that fence.
Right.
Yeah. Kate, have we had any more incoming from the neighborhood on this?
I haven't seen anything.
During the period
Checked Margaret's
since the
emails
last?
up to this afternoon, and I didn't see anything.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else you want to present to us?
No, I think, again, we've incorporated these comments into the plans. Not a whole lot of changes to the plans, really, but be happy to address any questions at this time.
Just the one additional waiver on the street lighting.
Right.
Did Margaret prepare any paperwork on this if we were to take a vote tonight? No. So it sounds like I'm opening this up to the board to have any questions answered that they may have to ask. But it sounds like we're not ready to take a vote until we have the paperwork ready with the conditions and the waiver requested, and so is that,
Margaret said, if the board feels they have enough information to close the hearing, I would suggest that you do that, but continue the deliberation until the October meeting. You can determine the conditions and vote whether to approve or not.
well, if we're going to close the hearing, we won't deliberate.
In October.
Well,
In
okay,
October,
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, okay. Does anyone have comments they want to ask tonight?
I have a question. Where are the mailboxes going to be? Are they going to be at the houses, or are they going to be on Cedar Street?
So usually in instances like this, we end up having a conversation with the postal service, and they'll tell us this is where we'd like them to see. But I suspect they'll either going to want 2 boxes at the cul-de-sac, or perhaps 2 boxes down by Cedar Street.
So you haven't had the conversation with the post office yet?
That's right.
Because I think that's going to have a bearing on the street name
Right.
issue.
Yeah, and frankly, maybe the emergency services providers, it's really get their opinion first, and then we can
Right.
go to see the post office after that.
My personal vote would be 8B,
I think so, yeah.
8A and B Cedar Street, just,
Yeah.
it's a neighborhood. It's the Cedar Street neighborhood.
Mm.
These houses become a part of the Cedar Street neighborhood.
It's just that technically it's a new roadway. I don't know if you might be able to do like Cedar Street Extension or something like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I think the post office is going to
The post office is going to push
Gonna-
back, but
want to weigh in. Or,
Well, we can certainly, if we've
I
got
don't-
until October, we can ask the question, see if we get a response between now and then.
I mean, that, you raised a good point too with emergency responders.
yeah.
Is there a list of the waivers required or sorry?
Yeah, we have to have that on the,
Is there a list of them that we can review? Have that been compiled yet, or was
So
that
the
something?
first sheet of
Should
the
be on the-
subdivision set has the 4 waivers that have been requested. And-
right, and
I
you're
don't
going to
have that.
add another one.
We can add the lighting waiver to that.
Yes, please.
Can you pull that up, Kate?
Sheet 1, I think.
Right.
It's going to be really hard to read. They're way down the bottom, and it's
Okay.
tiny print.
Yeah, yeah.
They're also listed, excuse me, on the cover letter that was submitted with the application.
Right.
We're probably going to want to go up to the cover sheet.
Yeah, the first page.
Oh, okay.
Just so we can review them one more time in case anybody has any.
Right, well, we're going to be doing this in October, we'll have the opportunity to
Down in the
do
lower
that.
right.
Adds an
There you go.
additional one.
Yeah, that's them.
Okay.
There we go.
Dead end streets.
Okay,
So
thank you.
With, Mr. Corey, you're still there, right? So, with respect to the first waiver, did I read your comments right, that you said that there's actually a swale, grass swale on each side of the roadway?
That's correct.
That's-
It's shown on C3.
Yep. And your conclusion was that that's sufficient, right?
Yeah, it's actually similar to a country drainage, and I think their waiver request was to go from the required 8-foot shoulder to a 2-foot wide gravel shoulder. The remainder of that shoulder is really taken up by a grass swale,
Okay.
which has a slight depression to it, as well as a catch basin located in each. So as the water runs off, it has an opportunity to go into the ground. And then any overflow from that would enter the catch basin and then travel through the rest of their stormwater management system. It's not a deep swale either. It's not like you'd lose a car in it like I've been seeing in Leominster.
Oh, we're in North Carolina, where I used to live. So we need to add that additional waiver. And I don't think we need to say anything about sidewalks because it's not being waived, so
I don't,
formally, it's not a
I'm
requirement.
not inclined to require a sidewalk here.
Yeah, no, neither am I.
So, it sounds like we need some additional information. So my question is, if we close the hearing, can we still accept that information, or should we just continue?
No, I think we need to continue the hearing until October. We will close it in October and take a vote.
May I be heard on?
Absolutely. Attorney Samasco.
I appreciate the progress that was made tonight. Miranda Samasco on behalf of the applicant. In the interest of some closure just on the process and a decision, I wonder if the board wouldn't consider actually voting a decision that, and we can walk through the conditions. I don't think there are that many, actually, that we heard this evening. That a new plan be submitted that adds the waiver request for the lighting, that some further detail be provided, I believe, with respect to the street name and mailbox. We can certainly, I think that is something that can be done before a building permit is issued, and has been done before. And then I think there was some additional detail requested regarding the roadway that can be, the silt fencing along the roadway, and that can certainly be added as a detail to a plan. I don't know that there were other open issues, and it would be helpful to the applicant who's trying to navigate financing and closing and approaching winter weather conditions for construction to have a decision.
Thoughts from the board? Typically, we would have paperwork prepared for us before we were at the stage, and we don't have that, so that's the reason for.
I'd say, I think that's part of the reason.
Well, that's my reason.
Yeah, well, okay. I would like to get the additional information to the peer reviewer first and have that come back to us. I don't think the roadway name is a small issue at this point. I think
Okay.
we're going to have to deliberate on that. I can tell you that I don't really see any major obstacles. I know we're not in deliberation yet, but
Right.
to give you some idea
appreciate
of
that.
where we're
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
I personally don't see any major obstacles with this, but I think there's some tidying up that needs to be done. And I think we're certainly going to be in a position to close and vote at the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Have to ask. You know how that goes. Thank you.
But if we do that, do we need
We need continuing, we need you
assent?
to agree to continue, and we need an assent.
Yeah, so we would request that the meeting be continued till your next available meeting. That's, what's the date in October?
Second
It's the second
Thursday?
Thursday, which
Okay.
is 11th, 12th?
And just to keep things efficient at the next meeting, if Margaret has some draft conditions or anything like that, if she could send them to us ahead of time,
I'm sure she can.
we'd appreciate that.
Second
And I
Tuesday
appreciate how
is
quickly you
Thursday
got
is the
back to
12th.
Mr. Corey. That, I mean, that only came in a few days ago, so.
No, good review comments, I think, and we're all working together very well, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, did you say this was going to get continued to October 2nd?
The 12th, actually.
12th? Oh, okay, excellent.
7 PM.
Okay.
So, do we need a written assent, Kate?
We do.
Continuance? I think we
I
do.
think we do, yeah.
It's in the
Is that a problem?
I got a piece of paper, I'll write something up in a few minutes.
Okay.
Or if you'd rather, I can email you something tomorrow, I don't,
I'll just make the motion based on the proviso that you are making a written request for continuance.
Okay.
And move that we continue the public hearing until October 12th.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
4-0.
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Right.
being
Thank you all.
thorough and answering questions. All right, and then the next item is just administrative. 47 Maple Street preliminary subdivision,
Yes, and they are requesting a continuance.
and that's being, and has that been requested in writing too? Yes, yay.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Have a good evening.
Take care.
This is great.
Very efficient,
Very
Bob, thank you.
Ready for a late night.
So then the next items are truly administrative, and they deal with an MBTA community follow-up discussion, our meeting minutes, and then I have an item that wasn't posted because it occurred after the posting went in, for discussion and a vote by the board, I hope. So
We could even include that probably in the MBTA communities discussion, since it's part of the
Fair.
MBTA.
Fair, that's good. Did you want to present collected
I'll
comments?
just talk a little bit about it, if that's
That would
okay?
be
And
lovely.
then you should have in your packet, go ahead.
Before you do that, can I just raise a general administrative thing, since we're in the administrative section
Yes.
here?
Yes.
And it just carries over from this last presentation. We've talked about this for, I think, years, that we need a submission deadline in advance of our
Oh, yeah.
meetings that is longer than 2 days or up to the day of our.
So we don't get them the same day?
Exactly, so we can actually review materials.
Yeah.
So can we revisit that at some point?
I would
Maybe at
love
the end of
to.
this meeting, I don't know,
We also have to decide what our titles are. We have to do
Okay.
that at the end of the meeting, too. But
And can we do that without having posted that in the agenda?
No, we
No.
have to, it has to be
So
posted.
we can talk about it,
So
but we
can
cannot
reorg-
vote.
You can reorg
Okay.
next time. I'll put
Right.
that note in.
I'm getting
Or we
good
could
at this
just-
stuff.
you are.
designate
You better
Peter.
know.
Horrible.
Stuff we don't want to do, right, because he's not here.
Yeah, okay.
All right, sorry.
So moving on?
MBTA, would
Yeah.
we had a lovely meeting with the select
There you
board
go.
last
Good.
Thursday. I felt like we were in accord on a lot of matters related to the MBTA zoning overlay, which is, we want to reach out to as many people in the community as makes sense, meaning everybody who is interested, on the options, and we're going to need some support to help with that, which is my piece of this, but then Mr. Woodland was
Well-
collecting thoughts.
Correct. So we asked, in the meeting, we asked that if any of the select board members or planning board members had any thoughts or ideas about what they've just seen or need more information, this was a good time to speak up, and they did. Several people did. I received word from Peter Clay and Diane Bucco that they were unable to respond. They didn't have anything to add, but Ben Timon, Gary Cheeseman, and Deirdre Pirati did have some feedback. So I don't know that a lot of this relates to us so much as MPAC. So if you want to go through and read it, we could maybe take on what we think is in our realm that we might have to help. Right, but I think most of this should go on to the master plan.
Wait, what do you mean it should go on to the master?
It should go on to the master plan advisory committee for their review, correct, as well?
What?
Because a lot of these were.
Oh, these
These
suggestions?
suggestions
Oh, okay.
really there's stuff we should be aware about and we maybe need to deliberate about, but it really needs to get to those folks so that they can really blend it into what they're already doing. They may have answers to these that we don't know. Or they may be working on some of these things that we don't know.
And you're referring in particular to,
A lot of Mr. Cheeseman's comments were specific, very specific.
right.
So,
Yeah, so I saw these comments, and I don't know if it was just Gary, Ben, and Deirdre, right?
yes.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I thought they broke down into kind of two camps. One was, how do we do our presentation to the public? What's the best way to approach that?
Right.
And the other category was kind of specific questions about particular parcels and what additional information do we need before we have a public presentation? Or what do we want to ask town council about on some of these scenarios? I'm not sure that's an MPAC issue.
Oh, okay.
Especially the presentation part, we can hash that
That's-
out.
Yeah.
Gary had a lot of questions that are very specific, some of which are going to require town council, I think. But the bigger picture is, we need to start the discussion and deliberation about the parcels. So a lot of those were geared at one particular parcel, which was.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm speaking MPEG. I'm sorry, I got totally confused. That was, start again.
Okay.
We were asked for them to give their comments about the MBTA overlay, the MBTA by right
Yes.
Yes.
zoning, and I'm totally on a different level. So I apologize for that total forgetfulness. But yes, these are our issues. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was wondering why
But
you were.
I'm sorry, like I said, bright red because I just lost it. I'm so into MPAC and getting all that going.
I mean, it is, of course, relevant
To
what
them,
MPAC
but
is
our
doing.
comments need to then be translated to them.
This is a state
Correct.
requirement.
Correct.
So we are going to have to figure this out. And some of these questions, honestly, some of these questions are questions we've been asking as we went through this. We just don't have answers yet.
Yeah.
Right? So, and it's not that they're not important questions or too detailed, it's just we don't have answers yet. I note that Ben has confirmed that the Housing Authority is, in fact, the record owner of the parcel. So that's something we didn't know the other night, and is interesting.
But does that mean it's the same identity as the town?
Well, that might be the piece that's still missing.
Okay.
As I
Steve is
understand,
conferring with KP Law for guidance on some of the relevant nuances on control.
Okay.
as I understand housing authorities, they're much like school districts, that they have their own autonomy. So that's definitely a question. When we were working in the Affordable Housing Trust, there definitely is a boundary between what the town can do and what the housing authority has control over.
Right.
It's pretty detailed.
So that's something we need to work through. So this brings us to my output, which you'll find in the packet, and that is the need for temporary additional support for planning and land use activity, fall 2023 to fall 2024. I don't know if you had a chance to look at this, David. It's in your, probably not, because I just got it to Kate this morning.
Is it in the packet?
It is in the packet. It's way at the back. It's like before the,
Oh,
well, it's before the.
Before the minutes?
probably.
Okay.
At least it was in mine.
It is there, at least in mine. Right before the minutes.
Got it.
There.
Okay.
So anyway, I can read it aloud, you can read it quietly to yourselves, but the upshot is, while the town has engaged a consultant to support the master plan process, there is no such support for the MBTA community zoning overlay work that needs to be done over the next calendar year, including getting ready for, working with our lawyers and getting ready for town meeting, which we're gonna have a special town meeting in the fall in order to get this done on time. There's plenty of land use work already for our two part-time folks. Back and forth with Steve Poulos over how to handle this. And it sounds like Kate would like to go full-time, so we're asking for an emergency, I forget how he's framed this. I was like, asking for brackets, please fill in, Steve, and he filled it in for me, which was very kind. An emergency funds transfer to fund the additional cost associated with additional consultant or it should be I think, staff support, because there's also a piece of this that would go to a consultant to help with renderings of the various massing options as we pull that together.
But what do you mean the massing options?
Well, in other words,
Buildings.
we have to do more than just figure out where it goes. We have to figure out what the components of the requirements are gonna be.
Got
So
it.
can you limit the height? What does the building mass look like from the street? Can you make some setback?
And I got something to say
What are
about
those?
that.
What do those look like? Okay, hold on.
I'm holding on.
But anyway, I could just submit this, or we could vote on it.
Let's vote. I move to adopt it.
Yeah, me too.
Dan's letter requesting
Sorry, second.
additional support
Additional support of.
for the MBTA community zoning overlay.
Yes,
The
$32,000.
question is Kate gonna second it?
I asked her that, and she said yes, so,
Okay.
not to speak for you, but, so let's have a show of hands vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
So then this can go back to
Great.
Steve and Diane with a signature on it. I've already done some chicken scratches
I have a
on
clean
this,
one
but
if you
have a
wanna-
clean one, I'm just gonna sign it.
Clean one.
Excellent.
So,
Wow, we're moving fast.
Board Tuesday.
Okay.
so
So vote taken September 14th.
It needs to get on the agenda, though,
Is this your
tonight,
other item
right?
not
Tomorrow
recently
morning?
anticipated?
This is the other item, which is now part of the MBTA thing, because it makes more sense there anyway.
So I'm gonna tuck in something else, not reasonably anticipated, but it dovetails on this and MPAC. Is that okay?
MPAC or MBTA?
Well, it's MBTA related.
Okay,
Go
well then
for it.
it's
Okay.
appropriate at this time.
So,
Okay,
you all remember Dan Hodges, the Econometric Sky.
oh, yes.
So Dan was retained as part of MPAC in the Jen Goldson budget to provide fiscal scenario modeling in connection with different development scenarios to help the town understand the impact of new types of land use across the town in the future land map. Part of his budget, the proposal was a final report that described this fiscal impact scenario-based analysis. For reasons, at some point it was decided, I guess we'll just say, as part of MPAC and the leadership of MPAC, that it pivot. There was some concern that if he actually did scenarios based around specific parcels, that would be bad. That you don't want to actually say, for such and such parcel, the highest and best use would be such, and therefore we should do that. So instead, his end product was a very nifty little tool, which I think you all have seen, or maybe have it's been referenced to you. It's a spreadsheet where you can plug in different variables, and it'll kick out what his model shows is the fiscal impact of a specific type of development. So, for example,
oh, cool.
a 50-acre plot of land, if you did so many high-density housing units with retail, square footage of this much retail, this would be the fiscal impact for the town, positive or negative, whatever the case may be. That's an awesome tool, but I think my perspective with the MPAC is that we needed a little bit more than that. We actually needed a report that was not site-specific, but that laid out a couple of scenarios. I'll be even more specific, like 4 scenarios that said, okay, hypothetically, we're not going to point to any parcels, but if in the future state town of Wenham, we had 50 acres that were office park, plus mixed use, retail, and high density, plus X, Y, and Z, this would be the net fiscal report. So that people could see, okay, so if we drive the town in such and such direction in terms of land use and rezoning and redevelopment and whatnot and assessment and all that, this is how much it's gonna move the needle. So if we drive in this direction or that direction, hypothetically, with this increased amount of these various types of development or change in land use, this is the fiscal impact that we can expect.
He kind of did that in his, because if you were here for that
He kinda did, but my
presentation he did,
he kinda did. I mean, he said 3 Walmarts will do this much.
right.
But that's not really enough, in my opinion. It's gotta go a little bit further.
Was that from his initial presentation? I know he did a presentation a month or 2 ago.
Where he
For
had
the
like,
MPAC, which I
he
have
had
not
cool-
seen that one.
yeah, he
Right.
had cool little like mock-up drawings of like, 30,000 square feet of whatever.
But
and
was
the
any of the
mixed use-
math different from the first time
No.
he? Okay.
No. But so the thought in MPAC is, excuse me, let's go a little bit further here and just have him round out from the excess budget, something like $4,000 to $5,000. We have 15 or more left over or in reserve. Let's pull forward 4 to 5 so that we can get basically a narrative form of that PowerPoint so that we can use that
Yes.
in the future conversations that we have on MPAC.
Makes a huge amount of sense, because one of the biggest problems, or people keep identifying, is the tax rate's terrible, and we have to do something about it. So not providing some sort of something that shows what happens if we do X and Y.
This is like a reality. So MBTA.
Just to be clear about our acronyms, because we keep throwing MPAC and MBTA around. Did you mean our future deliberations for MBTA?
No,
as well?
so here's
Just
where
MPAC.
I'm winding it all the way around
Too many
now.
M's.
Okay.
So,
Right.
in our future, well,
Because
our
there's
future
one thing
deliberation for
I-
MPAC,
I mean, you could use
There's,
this little
there's
model.
one specific thing that we have to do for MBTA that this would be extremely useful for, and I don't want to steal your
Funny
thunder,
thing
so
you
go
should
ahead.
say. So I'm on the phone with Steve Poulos, and I'm like, "Hey, Steve, while we're asking him to do this 4 to 5,000, maybe he could bring up some scenarios for these MBTA scenarios that we're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, maybe he could run it through his model.
Run it through his model and tell us if you did mixed-use development with retail and high density at the housing site, scenario
Yeah,
1 or whatever.
yeah, well,
this is what the fiscal impact
We
would
haven't
be.
looked at that
Can
part
I
yet, have we?
say,
No,
there's
we have
one
not.
thing
We have
that
not.
we know that we need him to do, no matter,
Correct.
well,
Well, if it's,
slight variation based on
that's what
location,
my
but
study said.
we know that we have to put 73 units within a half mile of the station, right? So this would be great for him to do a mock-up of, okay, here's is what 73 units looks like, mixed use, not mixed use,
Right.
on this spot, or this, like, something like that. For, let's take the Larch Walnut parcel, because it's small, right? If we could see what that looked like,
Financially.
yeah, right. If you put a
As well
mixed
as-
use with 75
Physically.
units
As well as
there,
a drawing
yeah.
that showed what it would look like.
Because we know
That's what
we
we're gonna
have
need
to
going
do
forward for the
that.
community.
Not on that particular site, but we
money.
have to we have to zone for 73 units within a half mile.
Well, I'm glad you like my idea.
I do like
Your
that idea.
So,
And he needs a narrative report to go with it,
Yeah,
not
he
just a
does.
bunch of numbers.
Right.
Because that's the problem with the memo, is it's very complicated and hard to.
no, it's a very simple task. I think we want to get him the money to do this because we want to show people that we have to comply with the law, but this is the potential benefit to the town.
Correct, there's another side of it.
And
Correct.
the picture, this is what it will look like. I don't think it's as scary as, people
He
always.
can't do that, I don't
No,
think.
no, he
Yeah.
can't. But that's my letter.
We'll
Part
find
of
the
my
money.
letter is.
No,
that.
but I would love to see a mock-up of that with mixed use, because that parcel we're talking about, that 6-acre parcel, is the parcel that is closest to what's already developed.
Right.
So.
It's also closer to the spirit of the law, which was putting housing near a train station.
I gotta keep saying
Well, that's what we
that.
have to do. I mean, we
Me too.
have to zone for 73
Yeah,
within that half, so let's look at a
what
model.
it looks like, yeah, and see what.
How
the
can we
impact is.
maximize
And
what we're
can he
doing?
do one with mixed use and one without? Because,
Oh, yeah, he should.
okay.
The tool might be able to be used by administrative staff, I assume, right? I mean, isn't
Oh, yeah.
that what the original tool did?
Yeah,
Margaret could run
Margaret
through
can
it.
use it, I
Right,
guess.
so
I
we
don't
could
think it's-
remodel things with this extra staff that's going to be acquired. to-
Yeah, I think it's, even if his approach is limited, I think it would be helpful for him as an outside consultant to give us a fiscal modeling of at least maybe
Yeah.
2 or 3 of the
How would we move
scenarios.
this excellent idea forward?
I think we're already moving it forward. Steve's talking to him about doing the report. I talked to Steve for a while, and I told him I thought that we should try and get him to weave into the proposal some of this fiscal modeling for the MBTA sites. So if it goes up from 4 to 5 to 6 to 8, I think we should do that. I don't see it as distinct from MPAC, frankly. I know everyone wants to distinguish the two, but I don't think this is so far away from MPAC. This is a reality of our master plan. It's gonna be.
It's like a
Well,
given.
How hard would it
chapter.
be for him to just run a couple of the scenarios, right? We're looking at really,
It's a big deal what you just said, believe it or not, Dan, because there's a lot of tension right now between MPAC and the consultants about how much work they've done. And I can say more than that. I mean, I should.
But if the planning board is asking for it, that's a different thing.
yeah.
Correct.
And
I
so
hear what you're saying.
perhaps, could we have a motion can we do that? to
Do we need a motion?
request? I don't know. I'm just wondering if
What
we
are what are we moving for? We
Well,
should probably hash this out a little bit.
we're asking for some money from this consulting grant to be used to support an element of the master planning process, which is what this looks like.
I don't think we need to do that
You
in
don't
the
think we
sense
need
that the money's there and he's an engaged consultant. I think as long as we feel comfortable that we're not running over budget, and I think everyone does, like, we have the money in that process. And
You
it-
were just saying, though, that there's some concern on the impact that the consultants are
No,
doing.
no, no. That if we go back and ask him, just run a few scenarios, buddy, he's gonna be like,
No.
no, I've done enough, buddy.
I don't
I
think
see.
you make the request through MPAC. I think
No,
if
it
we,
goes
we
through the
make, we
town.
make the request
That's the
from
board.
us through the town channels.
That's why I'm thinking we might need a,
I'm not trying to overthink this, I'm just saying, none of us can, the impact can't pick up the phone. Joanne, as the leader, cannot pick up the phone and call Dan Hodges and say, hey, could you run a few scenarios for us? That's not gonna fly for a variety of reasons. But if Margaret calls him
That's where I was.
and says, but Steve Poulos has already called him, because that's already happening as part of impact.
So it's just a funding thing. It's where the money
barely
comes from.
even. It's just more of an update.
well, and the question is, how do we convey to Steve that the planning board is behind this excellent idea?
I think I already did.
You did, even though we haven't discussed it before.
Well-
I mean, I think everyone agrees now that it's a good idea, so do we need to, all of us each individually
I-
call Steve and
I
tell
think
him?
we push this through, I think we can wait for Margaret, or
We can pick up the
you
phone.
can pick up the phone and call Steve.
We could make a motion in support of something,
Yeah,
right? We
that's
don't
what
have
I'm
to approve something.
thinking.
Like, we make a motion in support of Steve Poulos contacting whatever the name of this consultant is to see if we
Yeah,
can,
just-
blah, blah, blah.
Before we do that, though, why don't we just reach out to Steve and ask him if he needs any formal action from us?
It'll take an extra month to get.
Yeah, we don't have to present that, though. We could just, we don't have to present our motion to him unless he doesn't,
Right, but if we
Buy
make a
that.
motion now, it's gonna be like a motion to explore the possibility of.
Sense of the board.
We want him to
Yeah,
work-
it's a sense of the board.
we're giving him a
decision.
task and we're not the select board. So we need to have some formality to it because he takes his lead from the select board technically, right? So I want to make sure that we're not usurping them either.
We'll be responding to one of the select board concerns, if I'm not. if
There we
I'm
go. See?
Correct, about, what
So,
the financial impacts of this will be, what
So-
expected effects on municipal services, town, schools, infrastructure.
so what's going on right now administratively is that Steve has asked Dan to prepare a final report that incorporates his PowerPoint presentation from July 19th with a narrative.
Okay,
Steve has also discussed with Dan further refinement of the mixed-use scenarios, including his presentation to reflect the MBTA housing scenarios.
okay, so he's
Okay.
really already on this.
So he's already on it.
He's already on this.
Oh,
Does he have the specific locations?
Dan?
Yeah.
Either one.
Well, so that's a good point. So,
I mean, we don't want him to just like pull MBTA out of.
no, I know. Do we want him to do all 4 or 5, or do we want
I-
to do 2?
So the 5 are all variations of 3 different spots. Right?
Right.
So the most we could put on the Walnut Larch is going to be 75. Well, that's not true. I guess we could put more, but it's 6 acres and
Walnut Larch means both of the sites, both lots?
the 6.3 acres.
No, just one,
It's just one.
Just the Walnut.
not the housing authority.
We've been calling it Walnut/Larch.
Okay.
Right.
What do you call
Basically, what it
housing?
would do would be, I think,
Housing authority.
redevelop, it would be basically whatever's in Wenham of the Crosby.
Circle.
Area, would get redeveloped.
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at that parcel, those 2 parcels, and you just said, hey, Dan, what happens if we do mixed-use development in high density there?
75 units.
With 75 units? That'd be great to know that answer. I mean,
The ones that jump out at me are, what if we do mixed use 75 units on that spot? What if we did, all 365 on housing authority? And what if we did,
And mixed use?
and mixed
Yeah.
use, yeah, you could do, yeah, and Boulder Lane. Like, those are the 3, he only really needs to run 3 things.
Can I ask you a question that's bothered me for some time?
Hmm.
How would we handle traffic associated with 365 units on those parcels?
Well,
Is that
that's-
physically, I mean, is that possible?
Well, you're assuming that somebody would actually build all 365 units there. And just because they can, doesn't mean they will. And part of the reason that they probably won't is that you can't handle the traffic.
Like it would never be approved?
Same thing with all the other real-world constraints on development, right? Do you have the water infrastructure?
Water,
Do you have the
sewer.
septic? Do you have the,
Package plant, room for a package plant in there, you know?
Even 75
That's why this is a
units.
silly exercise in some ways, because given how small we are, and that we share a station with Hamilton, the idea of us both having to meet these requirements in our little district is kind of nuts. But we have to do it, so,
So,
so back to your
I
point,
think it's
which is
already,
this-
yeah,
it's
I
already
think it's
in the
already
works.
in the works. I don't think we need to do anything. It was more of an update, frankly. But
Could you
I'm
stay
happy
in
to-
contact with him, just to make sure that it's kind of
I'm moving
taking,
forward.
taking
Yeah,
on
will you
our
call him
issues?
again and say we talked about it, and
Yeah, I'll
everybody, the
respond to
sense
the
of the
email.
board is very positive, and that, you know, if you can do these 3 scenarios, we'd be thrilled.
It's an email chain, me, Margaret, Deirdre, Joanne, and soon to be Kate.
Lucky you, yay.
so,
Walking
Excellent.
straight into the hurricane.
can I raise another MBTA?
Sure, we're still
You're
on
gonna
it.
follow up on that. So, what do we want to do for scheduling outreach? I'm thinking that we should probably do something in November.
Yeah, early.
Early, right.
Okay.
But up to
Not
that,
on our regular meeting.
And Deirdre is suggesting some kind of charrette event, which would mean that we would need to be, she says, similar to the plan for the Iron Rail session in early October, so that will be a month behind people, and then they'll have the opportunity to come and do it again. So the Iron Rail session needs to be really, really fun, so that people want to come back. Candy, I suggest.
We had candy at the other one.
Yeah.
No problem.
Things
So
for kids
should
to
we
do.
set a date? Then, and
I mean,
then we
I'm a
can-
little reluctant to do that without Margaret here, but we could do some aspirational date setting. I mean,
I'm just
what do
thinking
you
that,
do for Thursday in November?
I don't know, I mean, or if you're saying early November, so I assume that's to get ahead of the
Or the week
holidays and-
before our meeting. So our meeting in November is, I don't have my phone out.
I think Kate has her calendar out. Do you have your calendar out?
Is it, are you the second?
Second
Second
Thursday?
The second
That would
Thursday.
be November 9th.
So it will be the 2nd of November, which is what I thought,
So I think that's too early.
The ninth.
because we won't have enough
Oh, the 7th.
pizzazz.
Because
available.
we're gonna have to lay the groundwork for all the logistics at our next meeting, which is October 12th.
So
And
you
then-
think after the November meeting?
What are we, November
Well,
9?
Yeah.
I think that
That's
following week would
Thanksgiving.
be, when's Thanksgiving?
23rd, I think?
No, that's not Thanksgiving, that's enough time.
It's the week before Thanksgiving.
We have the 16th.
Week before, the 16th is our meeting, right? Oh, no, it's in
Ninth.
between.
The ninth.
I get it.
Because it's an early.
We could, I'm thinking that the following week.
16th.
It doesn't have to be a Thursday, but
It's Thursday,
I think that's okay. That's great, but we just need to think about what are we doing to get people there? Because we need to start that before our next meeting, or we need to come in our next meeting and
It
be
needs to be an item on our.
absolutely like ready to go with ideas and
Well-
approvals.
yeah.
Because if not, then we're going to be backed up to, if we don't have three or 4 weeks of running time to get
Put
a
it on a
charrette.
sign by the,
email the tax bills, email the tax bills, all that kind of stuff, the tax list rolls. So there needs to be outreach.
I think a fair amount of it needs to be word of mouth, because we always do the same thing for publicity, and it doesn't really seem to work.
Well, that's okay, but we've done our diligence, right?
No, I know, but.
Because if not, we become like that little group of people that are always involved,
you can't-
and then other
you're
people
right,
don't hear
you
about
can't
it.
make people care about
You
this
can't
stuff.
make people care, but you can at least tell them it's happening.
Lead a horse to candy, but can't
Correct,
make it.
make them drink.
That's all I had on MBTA's. I don't know if anybody else does.
Okay, well, it sounds like November 16th
For public outreach.
for the meeting.
For a meeting.
For a meeting, for a charrette or whatever it is we're gonna
Yeah.
do. That means we need to have this emergency money, and we need to get somebody who knows how to sketch PDQ.
So I think it's going in Tuesday, so we should have that emergency money passed, the 10,000 for that.
And do we already have somebody in mind who can do the mock-ups if we get there? We don't.
Wait, wasn't there some mock-ups for something else?
Yes, and somebody said, oh, that person did a great job, and I forget now what it was.
I thought
Was it
Margaret just
Iron Rail?
ran a program, or she had a
Okay.
website or something.
Maybe.
But-
That will have to await her return. Meeting minutes from the, and I'm gonna have to abstain from the last one because I wasn't here, or maybe not because I listened. Do I get to vote on them because I listened?
If you want. You got my edits right, Kathy?
I did, thank you.
So,
July 6th, 2023, do we have those? Where are they? Let's see.
Want me to send them to you?
are the ones in the packet the,
The
I
ones
think
They
the
that
ones in the
include-
packet are not edited.
oh, okay.
Yeah, no, they're not edited.
You want
I
them?
don't think.
I can put it up on
They're
the
not
screen if you
redlined.
send it to me.
Can you put the red lines up? That might be the easiest.
Yep, I'm gonna forward her that.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
I'm going on September 28th to that core theme 4, sustainably protecting Wenham's resources.
Send it to you. or should I
Oh,
send
I
it?
gotta
See,
do
that's on email
You
to
can send
me.
it to
It's what I have to do.
Okay.
See?
I think I copied, Kate, I
wonderful.
copied you on today's email.
I
Oh,
will
you
be
did?
able to
Yep.
attend on the 28th at 4.
It was this afternoon. There it is. I thought I saw me.
Oh, here it is anyways.
There really aren't a lot of.
This is for the 10 bucks.
So on July 6th, I was not in the room,
You can make the edits when they say.
I've already got them.
and I was only able to be on for a short period of time because I had horrible.
So these are my minor changes.
Okay, and I just note that I was not in the room on July 6th.
It doesn't say via,
It doesn't say via the, or was I in the room? No, actually, never mind, I was in the room on July 6th. It was the next one, it was
August.
well, we had 2 meetings in July, and I was not able to participate. We didn't, I myself had 2 meetings, and that was the second one I couldn't participate in. I'm confused. Oh, it looks good to me. Is there more down the bottom? Oh, boy. That you were able to capture all that discussion into this small amount of text is
She's so impressive.
really impressive.
I'll move to approve the minutes as amended.
June 28th ES, held for the next meeting, that's not relevant, okay. Second,
Aye.
Aye.
aye, 4-0, approved. August 10th, this one I definitely wasn't here for, but I did watch the meeting.
And I reviewed these last week, so does this already have my,
yes.
okay.
This one does.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Are the page numbers right?
No.
This page 1 says page 2 of
They
2,
keep
2
saying
of
Page
2.
2 of 2.
And there's page
1
at
of
least
2
3
should be
pages.
1.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
I'll
page 2
try to
of
fix that. I already did try to fix
It's okay, I went to go look at the CPC webpage that lists all the agendas and meeting minutes. There was one set of minutes from April 1st, and there were no prior minutes.
Are you sure it wasn't an April Fool's joke?
April 1st are the minutes that I wrote because it was a meeting in front of Town Hall, before Town Hall, for town meeting. So I got to figure that one out, Caitlin. I don't know who that reached out to that one.
I think that's a Joe.
That's a Joe? Okay, I think that's a Joe.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
problem, I got it. No problem.
They're all page 2 of 2.
Yeah, they're all page 2 of 2.
You're
so-
consistent, very
Yeah,
consistent.
but I'm going to say, where's the end?
Weird.
It's 6. You've got 6, 4? And this, and, yeah, and your first page on July 6th is 2 of 3, but it should be 1 of 2. I don't know why that should be, but it is. It should be 2 of 2 on the second page, but I think that's an administrative typo fix. We don't
Yeah,
have
it
to
can't be
vote
right.
on it.
That's gotta be, I think I questioned if the house could be built.
Yeah. Well, no, and confirmed it could not be built by right.
I don't know if we did
We did.
that.
What did you do?
I think the question was, could you do this without the waivers?
Yeah,
Could you
build
Yes,
it by right?
you
without
asked
the
that.
waivers?
Is it by right?
Subdivide by right.
And the answer was no.
No, I think he said he could, oh no, the
No,
answer is no,
Oh, he
because of
said
the,
no.
right. All right, so make that change.
Catherine, on page 2,
One second.
Okay.
One second, please. I'm sorry. Right in the middle. Okay, what?
middle of the page, sentence starts with Mr. Pasquarello.
Page 2, you said?
Yes. You're right
Yep.
there. Confirm the waivers with Mr. Griffin and confirmed the house
Houses? Yep.
could not be built by right.
Okay, thank you.
That's right, I was on Zoom, wasn't I?
You were dialing in
You
from
were on Zoom. I noticed.
I was in-
Oklahoma
I was
or
in,
Memphis?
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Nashville,
No, Knoxville.
Knoxville.
Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as changed?
Rick, on that next line, Mr. Woodland questioned the planning board's responsibility or options. Should or be and?
Let me read me.
And Mr. Anderson, down toward the bottom of the very large paragraph here, Mr. Anderson acknowledged contaminant cleanup. I think that should be expensive.
Expensive, yeah.
And I don't know about the rest of the sentence. Right there, where your little
I'm not
doodad is.
there.
That one, yeah. Can you just read that and decide what the proper, I can't even, I'm not sure. I think there's a missing word.
Or just a comma.
Is expensive. Enc-
Comma.
Encourage the use of the historic use of the property by the previous owners be made known to LSP,
Comma.
and they speak with the abutters regarding their knowledge. Yeah, that makes sense.
So just a comma?
It's just 2 commas.
And
expensive, E. Yeah. Expensive, comma,
Oh, not
by the
expensive.
previous owners be made known to the LSP, comma.
And I'm gonna,
That makes it make more sense. Because when I was reading it, I was like, what?
Oxford comma, is that what that
Those Oxford commas.
Yeah.
and I think, David, that Mr. Woodland
that.
questioned the developer's responsibility an option, because the answer that comes back from Ms. Samasco was, he has to do this, this, and this. Right, so it must have been
And?
questioned the developer's responsibilities and options.
It was, you questioned the planning boards, but it could be out of context here.
Responsibility.
You said, what's our responsibility for this if they build
Oh,
it?
I see. So the-
If an environmental problem were.
If, so then we got to add that, if an environmental problem, right?
Yeah,
Problem occurs,
yeah.
Yeah. Is, yeah.
is,
And options. Yeah.
Oh,
Is incurred, right?
No.
No?
Occurs.
is
If
found
occurs,
or
yeah.
occurs.
Found or occurs, something. Oh, these are nice pens.
Okay.
Okay, I move to approve as edited.
Second,
Aye.
Aye.
thank you.
I also move that we adjourn until October 12.
Oh,
At
did we,
7
did
PM.
we, did
Other
we extend the
matters?
open, did we extend the public meeting?
Yes.
We did that already,
Yes.
okay.
All right, we continued it.
Yep. So I
There are
re-
no other matters because we've dealt with my request, so
I remove that we adjourn until October 12th, 7 PM.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Here's this affidavit, it's actually that.